Stories are lived before they can be told, especially real-life ones. My name is Osadumebi, and every week I will tell you a short story written by a Nigerian writer or author. That's the long and short of it. So without much ado, this week's story is by Dumebi Ogboli, and it's titled And. I nearly quit this venture between March and April of 2023, and on several occasions thereafter, if not for 3 letters. A-N-D. One word. And. Yes, and, as in, and. The humble and we use up and down. Picking up my first aid in English for a moment. Okay, that reference demands a pause. Not to ruin the punchline or anything, but if you got that reference, I greet you. As in, if you did not get the reference, Google will only show you, but it cannot tell you. Moving on. Picking up my first aid in English for a moment. A conjunction is a word used to connect clauses or sentences or words in the same clause. Beyond its grammatical definition, the word and is a combination of events or circumstances. It's a number of associated persons or things. And in astronomy and astrology, it's an alignment of 2 planets or other celestial objects so that they appear to be in the same or nearly the same place in the sky. And then, bear with me. Episode 14 from January 2023, titled Osadumebi, tells the story of how I got started down this path. I mentioned briefly that I changed jobs, but I didn't go into detail. Leaving out the detail wasn't because I didn't want to explain. But how do you explain the why and how behind scary leaps of faith which you yourself only get in the sort of makes sense kind of way, but you'll confuse anyone you try to explain it to? Did that make sense? Okay, let me try to explain because this story won't make sense otherwise. I said try you, as in try to explain. I may not succeed. And if you have questions, I'm probably asking myself the same questions that you have. And all I can do is refer you back to episode 14, Osadumebi, where I share the meaning of my name. Right, the explanation. I'm a skilled project manager, and I went from being a permanent employee to hiring out my skills on a temporary contractual basis. High risk, high reward. Not in the least because there is no guarantee of a stable income to not only live off, but to sustain this venture in its startup infancy stage and make sure it becomes a toddler. Securing contracts can be a fraught game of chance, on and off. The aim being to be more on than off. I started from off, 8 months long. Then on, 7 months. Then off, 8 months. Then on. You get the drift. Equation not the balance. Ever. But Osadumebi. The ons and offs of my contract jobs had so far dovetailed nicely with this venture until certain joints began to friction quite badly, and I was back to burning the proverbial candle at both ends. Things came to a head, and I decided to quit this venture, but I procrastinated on quitting and took a break instead. I laugh now, but it was not funny. I was really struggling. I sure couldn't bring myself to throw in the towel just yet. That was when I became even more cognizant of the ands at work. There's something else about and maybe, how many tangents? But in my defense, I declared that I was going to try to explain. I am trying, so please bear with me. Right, something else about and. One of my favorite phrases from the Bible often begins with and. Increasingly, I appreciate the and before the phrase. What's the phrase? I hear you ask. And it came to pass. Or the variant, and it shall come to pass. Time will not permit me to explain. I'm already all over the place with trying to explain simple I changed jobs and why and how. So let me just respect myself. But you see that and before it comes to pass. That and is a very pregnant pause if there ever was one. In fact, every word in that phrase is pregnant with meaning. But let's just focus on and. The and cannot function if there is nothing to connect. There needs to be at least two things to connect. And you have to be one of those things. In whatever state you find yourself, just be there. So where was I in this story before I went off on too many tangents? Okay, me burning the candle at both ends and wanting to quit, but choosing to take a break instead, and then the ands beginning to do their thing, connect. And it came to pass that one of the links I told you about in episode 14 connected in a way I was not expecting. It just so happened that one day, while scrolling on Instagram, I noticed my friend's sister who I voted for was now a virtual assistant. I clocked it, followed her new account, to support, only to support, and I went on my merry way. I saw one VA job one time, virtual assistant job one time. I thought of her and I sent her the link. Fast forward to one day in April 2023, as I'm half praying, half meditating, half feeling sorry for myself, and I sense a nudge in my spirit to contact my friend's sister. And I'm like, Father, what is it now? Yet another leap of faith. Let us see something from all the other leaps first, I beg. He didn't answer me. He just kept nudging and nudging. I took the leap, and somehow it is still coming to pass. Episode 68. And it came to pass that Ijoma, virtual assistant extraordinaire, became an invaluable part of my team. Story for another day. And it came to pass that we're still connecting with amazing authors and writers who graciously agreed to collaborate as a one-off or on an ongoing basis. And it came to pass that the podcast celebrated its first year in October 2023 with the launch of Series Week. Tune in next week for the series for Q1 of 2024. It's an absolutely beautiful story from an awesome writer. And it came to pass that the release of the second audiobook I narrated is imminent, When Night Falls by Lisa O'Hara. And it is still coming to pass that in whatever state I find myself, I'm still here, turning up, believing for, and looking out for the ands. And it shall come to pass, the evidence of things not seen. How do you tell a story that's still in flux? How do you keep writing the story when you don't know the characters that will enter and exit, and how? How do you know if the plot line is strong enough, if the characters are right and believable, if there's too much or too little tension and activity? How do you know? There's only one way to find out. Stories, especially real-life ones, have to be lived before they can be told. 3 letters. A-N-D. One word. And. This is my unfolding story. Well, a small part of it. If you don't already know, I'm Osadumibi, but everyone calls me Dumibi. I work as a project management professional during the week from 9 to 5. And at every other time, it feels like I'm a voiceover artist who helps Nigerian writers and authors transform their written work to audio and make it available to a wider audience through audiobook platforms and this podcast. So, if you've got a story you'd like to be featured on this podcast, or a published book you'd like to make into an audiobook, I would love to hear from you. Send an email to info@osadumibi.com or contact me at Osadumibi on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, formerly Twitter. I look forward to collaborating with you. And if you've enjoyed this week's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend that stories are a good escape for a few minutes each week.